Boom. All right. Episode for not episode topic. Topic for today's episode is going to be how do you deal with heartbreak? How can we actually use that constructively instead of trying to maybe avoid it or feel like, oh, this is such a bad thing, I should avoid this at all costs. Like, are there any lessons maybe in a heartbreak or breaking up with a person, and how can we use that for our own evolution to come into our fullest potential as a man? That's kind of what I want to discuss. So
The clickbaity title, How to Never Get Hurt or How to Avoid Breakups. How to Get Back to Your Ex. That should be the title. That is going to get a lot of clicks. But that's not what we are going to talk here. Yeah, do you want to start mainly telling us what do you think in terms of breakup? Like, does everyone goes through a breakup? Is this part of what we should learn how to deal? Should we try to avoid it because it's painful, or it shouldn't be painful? Just give like the broad strokes of your life brush.
I think a lot of us, when it comes to relationships, especially if we've been in a couple, right, and we've gone through some serious pain, a lot of us, I think, try to somehow, on some level, avoid going through that again. And so we almost try to pre-select our partner in advance and be like, does he check all the boxes? Is this the right thing? And is this the right thing? Instead of actually going into it and then seeing what happens. So I think this idea of trying to prevent breakups almost like stems from this idea that breakups inherently are a bad thing. And for me personally, I think that is not true. Like, based on my experiences, I think breakups can be actually even a very necessary step in our evolution. I think they're always a necessary step. And sometimes it ends rather badly for various reasons. One of them, for example, being that we just didn't see the signs sooner, you know? It had to get to a point where it just got so intense, and then boom, there's an intense breakup. And it feels really bad for us, like on an emotional level. And so we want to try to avoid that again. But overall, I would say breakups are not inherently a bad thing. I think in no way are they a bad thing. It's just we've been conditioned to avoid the pain of breakups. So then we try to set up our life. And it's actually what happened with my ex-girlfriend that I was going to see in the beginning. She said to me, hey, listen, I don't want to get invested again and then get hurt really badly at the end. So she wanted to make sure that this is not going to happen again before she even started to see me in person, right? And to me, that was like, that's not how I want to lead my relationships. I think there's so much that we can learn from relationships, and I want to kind of dive more into that, but I also want to hear your opinion. Like, do you think inherently breakups are a bad thing, or is there merit to them?
It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone will go through a breakup or they have to, because at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone will be in a relationship. It's not part of, if you just stay at home, sitting on your couch, eating chips, and you don't do anything about it, how can you get into a relationship in the first place, let's say? But we'll talk about averages here. I think it's painful. I will not take that out the way I see it. It's painful in ways that, like, I wouldn't try to avoid a breakup because it's painful, or try to get into relationships because now I'm so numb that I don't feel these emotions anymore. I think the emotions that are part of the breakup is actually the things that make the breakups, for some people, important for them to grow in their lives, to grow in future relationships, to grow and see what are things that are important for him or for her, for things that are important to develop further. So in the sense, I agree when you say that we shouldn't avoid relationships. We shouldn't avoid doing things because we think that is going to be an emotional roller coaster, is going to be painful, or the opposite. Because, yeah, I just don't think that's the life that I would want to live, a life of trying to avoid different circumstances. I think breakups can be many things. Breakups can be when the relationship's just not supposed to work anymore, and then it's necessary to have the breakup. It's like, okay, it's not working anymore. I'm going this side, you're going that side. So let's just have different lives. It doesn't need to end up bad. But at the same time, a breakup can also be that someone got super drunk at a party and they cheated on the other person. And then it's like, okay, I'm not willing to accept that. I don't want to continue this relationship. And you've been together for a long time, let's say. There's a lot of investment there, there's a lot of trust that was broken. And to say that, you know, it's life, you don't need to feel sad about it. It's like, I don't think that's the reality, but I do think it's painful. But I don't think that when that happens, or because that happened, you need to start putting yourself in this, let's say, shells, trying to avoid certain things in life, because then you come up to relationships, or you come up to new experiences already with, not with both foots. So you go like, oh, first I'll go with this foot, I'll see how it is, then I'll go to the next one, and then something happens, it reminds you of the pain that you had in the past, and you're like, oh shit, no, 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 let me just run away. So yeah, a mix of everything. Is not super clear. I think there are there are good things that come out of that. There are also things that are sad, and we shouldn't avoid that. But they also point us out to better places and different places, I would say.
I think what will be really interesting is at some point, like on this call, to kind of see why do we even like what examples are there for breakups, right? Because maybe we can differentiate between when a breakup is actually a conducive thing and when it maybe is just reinforcing our old patterns, where you kind of talked about like dipping your toe in the water and being like, ooh, shit, this reminds me of some previous thing that I experienced. And then, right, it may not be the right thing to break up with this person. So we can discuss that. But the first thing I want to do now is actually talk a little bit about the general advice that people give out there when it comes to what to do when you are going through a breakup or when you are heartbroken right now. Like what are some of the advice that's given, and which advice is actually helpful and which advice is really hurting us in the long run, even though it may temporarily create relief for us, but in the long run it's actually hurting us because we're just covering up the pain, just putting a band-aid over it or trying to numb it, right? So what do you feel are some of the generic advices that you see out there that are being given by people on how to deal with breakups? And we can start with the stuff that maybe is more like the more mainstream stuff, and then we can move further and further into more like this is actually helpful and helps you integrate aspects of your experience.
Well, I would start with the algorithm sense to me, which is not always the nicest thing. But it's like this idea of like focus on yourself, fuck this person, just focus on yourself, grind and whatever. Don't let other people put you down or some shit like that. I think it's in itself is a good way to approach certain things in life. Like, of course, you shouldn't put yourself into positions where you just like completely lose faith in life or even relationships, that you're so down that everything just is numb and you don't want to do anything more. So in this case, okay, you know like let's try to step up. Let's try to go back into life. But at the same time, it's like there's nothing wrong in understanding why that hurts the way it does. Uncovering and going even further to really see why this relationship, the end of this relationship, hurts me so much. And that is a really difficult place to go because it fucking hurts. It's like, I remember one relationship where for me was like so tough that, like life just became like senseless, kind of. And the more I dig into that, the more I was able to see, okay, why I'm relying so much in this other person to make my life feel that it's worth to live my life, why I'm getting this? And then you inquire, you go further, you go places that are dark, you find things that you don't want to admit to yourself. Like the things, for example, for me, one important thing was that I would rely so much in having a beautiful girlfriend, let's say. So other people will see that I have this beautiful girlfriend and they will give me value for that. And okay, now I'm worth because I have this beautiful girl with me. And then I had to go there and be like, oh, actually, that is true. And that makes me a bit, let's say, it's not selfish, but the word when it's about appearance. I forgot the specific word. You know, when you just care about appearance, superficial. Yeah, it kind of makes me superficial. It's a deep thing, right? But it's like in the end, oh, I uncovered that and I can see that. It's like, yeah, like those things. This is just one example, but those things you can start inquiring because you are going into that place that you want to avoid so much. And then you start to learn how to give those things that you think the other person is going to give you by yourself. And then you are able to, in the next relationship, don't rely on thinking that the other person is going to give you everything. And then you're going to be destroyed after the relationship. Okay, but that's already going to the good advice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's see, another one that people give all the time. Oh, just, yeah, like kind of just go out and find a bunch of girls or a bunch of whatever, and and that's going to make you feel better. It's the same thing. It's kind of okay. It makes you feel better today, but what about tomorrow? What about the next relationship when the next relationship gets bad? So it's also just like surface. Try to make you feel better in the moment. Do you have any on top of your mind that you see quite a lot?
I would say just in general, like you said, this whole like rebounding, just go out, sleep with like a bunch of girls, and obviously the other way around too. Like if a girl is broken up with, and then it's like, oh, just sleep with a bunch of guys, and then you'll forget about him, or just get like drunk, or smoke weed, or like just almost like I think the generic thing that I see across the board is just like I'm just gonna forget about it. Like this idea of like I could just forget about it by distracting myself, by putting my attention temporarily on something else.
I see a lot also like this kind of list style where you start creating lists or ideas of things that you want and you don't want in a specific person. So that's also this protection part of, yeah, I heard it so much. I'm not going to look into myself to see why this is so painful to me, but I'm actually going to look at the next one to be sure that that person doesn't have these specific characteristics. And well, the explanation itself already tells you why we think it's not the ideal solution, but I see that quite a lot also.
Well, yeah, that feeds right into this whole avoidance of pain, right? Like we want to put life in this box and say like only this I can allow, right? And the rest has to stay outside. Like a guy who has this quality that hurt me before, no, get out. Or for a woman, like she has these qualities that hurt me before, I'm not even going to talk to her. So we try to put life in this tiny box, and then our experience becomes super uncomfortable because we constantly have to evaluate and be like, "Ooh, is this person fitting in the box?" And then we have to resist it or push it away. But then at the same time, we also start. I think that's the other side of the coin. Really, we start to really crave even more intensely the things that we really want. So we get really addicted to the stuff that is a plus on our list, a positive thing on our list, and really zero in on that. So we have this really strong aversion to some things and this really real addiction to other things. And I think that's when it becomes really problematic at some point. Like when we try to put life, which is like we can't just put that thing in a box, right? Like it's just not possible. If we truly want to be free, if we want to have the types of relationships that really are deeply fulfilling and satisfying, then we're not going to get there by pre-selecting and being like putting our walls up and saying like only this thing is going to come through, only that thing is going to come through. Because if we look at what are these walls made up of, just past experiences that we've had that felt painful, And the only reason why we keep reinforcing these walls is because we still haven't found the tools that really allow us to take them down and to deal with the pain. If we have a solution to then deal with the pain, then it's almost like, why would I try to avoid this? Right? And then we can start to like go into now, like, what does the pain even tell us? Like, what are some kind of breakups where the pain is actually a necessary thing because we can't realize it, like that something needs to change. So for example, I'm just going to give an example for myself. When I was in Toronto, it was like a brutal breakup, like the first one I ever had on that scale.
That's funny because
And
the most brutal one that I had was also in Toronto. Just a side note.
yeah, so my ex-girlfriend, I had this product launch going on and I was super stressed out and I was like working until 4 a.m. every single day. And emotionally, there was some stuff that we had to like talk about. I knew that. And so I made plans with her. I couldn't make it. I canceled on her. She got really upset. And then I was just like, okay, let's not talk for a couple days. Like, I think it's best if I just focus on this launch, which is really important in my life right now. A lot depends on it. And then we can talk after because emotionally, I'm just not in a place to do that. And then she just blocked me and she's like, have a good life, basically, and completely like broke the whole thing down. I was just destroyed, right? And what I didn't realize at this time, though, until that point, I was constantly neglecting myself. She had become my addiction. Like, I really hated the stuff that I was doing. I hated the work I was doing. I didn't like the people I was living with. There was so much stuff that I didn't like. And she was almost like this drug that I was using to kind of stay alive, to cope with the situation. And so it had to get to this point where I really started to see what needs I wasn't meeting myself, right? Stuff that I wasn't giving to myself, where I was not treating myself well, not getting enough sleep, not eating right, putting too much on my plate, stressing myself out unnecessarily, all of that stuff. And with this breakup happening, life really put me face to face with all those things because now I couldn't run from them anymore. So in that sense, this breakup was really, really painful, but also really, really necessary in order for me to even see this stuff. Do you feel like something similar happened with you, girl? Like stuff that became clear to you after the fact, after the breakup happened, that you just didn't see beforehand?
Yes. Well, I would say that I've been to basically 4 main breakups at this point. One made me start learning about girls, trying to understand how that whole thing works. Then this one that happened in Toronto was actually really tough because I was in a really bad financial situation. I went to see her. Yeah, I had like no money to rent a place, and I was staying in her place. And it was just really painful because she was seeing the guy. She broke up, and she said like, "Oh, I broke up with him. Now you should come and stay with me in Toronto in my place." I was like, "I'm broke. Can you pay for my flight?" And then I stay in her apartment. There's no cost and anything, so we can do that, and I cook and whatever. And then she did, and I came there, and the first day she was really strange. Then I pushed forward, asking her questions and being like, "Yeah, like you look strange." And like in the first day that I arrived, she just said like, "Yeah, I don't feel this. It's like I think I made a mistake. I don't want to be with you." And I had 1 more week to stay because my flight was 1 week after. I had no money to rent another place. I was just like, it was just like a really bad situation. And I remember like going to sleep at night and looking to the window and being like, wow, how can life go lower than this shit, you know? And we kind of had a story before, like we met in different countries and so on and so forth. And that was really tough because I really liked her at that point. I was like really, really attached to the idea of building something with her. And after like learning all these things, doing all the coaching with like the guy that I was working with, I was like, I was in my prime, let's say, meeting, having dates every time. I was like, I decided to stop all of that for this girl, and then this thing happened. So it's kind of like a bunch of things, a bunch of like personal ideas of who I was, personal things that kind of got in the way. And after that breakup, a few things became important for me. which was work on my finances. I didn't want to, yeah, rely on the same things that I relied before, where I basically have zero money to do things. Thinking that having a relationship was what gave me value. That was an important one that I got from that. Another one was a leap of faith in the moment, because yeah, for me it was so tough that I, at some point, I had like these suicidal ideas, kind of like I can't stand this anymore, because I had to see her every day coming back, and we were like sleeping in the same bed. It was just like really triggering every day. And then I made this leap of faith of, okay, if it's really crossing my mind to do something like this, like suicidal things, then for the next few weeks, I'm just gonna focus on doing the things that I really want to do in my life. And if everything goes bad, I can always return to this point that I am right now, which is rock bottom. And that kind of gave me a kick to move forward and do different things and explore different things. And the pain was there, like the pain was there for like many, many months before. And every time I was in contact with that, I tried my best to see why it was hurting. So I did a lot of shadow work I did back in those time. I went to some therapy to also understand, okay, why this hurts so much. I don't understand. It's like I just don't understand. And then I did a lot of this work to try to understand what was getting in the way. And like, and that I think was a really, really good base for me to understand the process of a breakup, why it can hurt, but why I shouldn't also put my life at risk because of a breakup. Kind of like this idea, to make it really simple. Because like, for example, my last breakup was, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. It was sad. I'm not going to deny that it was sad. I'm not going to deny that that's not what I wanted from that relationship. But it's not like I will not. I never got even close to what I felt in that breakup, because now I know that I can give myself the things that I was not able to give back in those days. So when I got separated from that, I felt like I lost my life. And now, no, now I think, okay, it didn't work. I can find someone else that might be a better fit, or if I don't, I can just continue living my life being single or whatever. But in the end, it's more like I am giving myself what I need, and the other person is not supposed to fulfill this holes that I have on myself, but rather, yeah, be whatever I'm looking in a relationship in terms of growing together or whatever it is. Then you can decide for yourself.
Damn, man. I didn't know about the suicidal thoughts. I remember you telling me the story, but not the part about like actually feeling like shit. Maybe I should just take my life. And it's crazy that we get pushed to that point, right? Like it's such a big deal to us. Like it's so important that it cuts so deep that we're even considering like, yeah, there's literally guys that take their life because of this. Right. And so it's not a small thing to just be like, well, whatever, it's actually a big deal. And I think it's just about like what are the tools that we're using and to really help ourselves in the situation, because it's wherever you are in this journey, like there's different tools that can help you in the moment, right? Like if it's so acute, maybe just getting shit faced and drunk or fucking someone else, like maybe that's a good option. In the long run, it's not actually the best thing, obviously, but in that moment it might actually help you get out, so then you can find the other tools that really help you long term. And I think one thing that was really interesting that came to my mind as you were talking is it really, there's two things. One is our definition of love, like how that plays into all of this. And the second is this dependence that we feel, like dependency on another person, like to the degree that we depend on the other person, what we need from them, to that degree we're going to experience pain when that falls away again. unless, and this is the key point here, unless we start in the relationship to figure that out and be like, oh, this is the thing that I really want from this person, this is what I'm seeking, and then I start giving that to myself. When I do that in the relationship, then eventually relationship can end and you can feel like, wow, this relationship has really served its purpose, and you don't feel like heartbroken because you got the message. And I think that ultimately also comes back to what are relationships for. Like in my current perspective, it's really just a an aid, an assistance to leveling up for the other person. So like we're mirroring to each other what we still need to develop, what we still need to integrate. And if we actually can listen to that, if we don't blame the other person, if we don't try to put them in a box and say, oh, it's one of those crazy bitches again, like get the fuck out of this relationship. If we can get the message, then we can actually utilize that and it's going to become something constructive in our own evolution. Right? If we don't run away from it. Can you relate to that?
Yeah, 100%. And the thing that you were saying in terms of the end of the relationship, that is also a big one that, yeah, I've learned with other breakups, which is, yeah, it can be sad, but it's like the relationship served its purpose. And it's like, I needed to get this, or we both needed to get this. We both needed this for growing up, or it was just because we liked to be with each other. Sex was good, whatever. It can be many reasons why you were in that relationship. And then when it ends, instead of feeling like you're losing, it's like, no, you fulfilled what had to be done. And the idea that I have that is really in our culture in general is that whenever a relationship ends, it means that the relationship failed. And I don't agree with that. I think when the relationship ends, it's because it had to end and it was the purpose. It doesn't mean that this time that you're together, and this is also an idea that I see quite a lot. It's like, oh, I wasted 4 years of my life with this person. It's like, what? Just because the relationship ended, you think these 4 years were for nothing? I mean, it can be if you're for 4 years in a relationship that you don't want to be, and everything goes bad, and you stay there. Okay, even you could say that you didn't have to go through these 4 years to learn your lesson or learn the things that you need to take from that, but in itself, that time that you were together, it had a meaning, it had a purpose. There was a reason why you were there. And now just because it ended, you just disregard everything and sometimes even the other person. I find that a bit like too one-minded. It's like when you're not open to fully analyze things and why things happen. And then you just, no, 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 wow, I wasted so much time with that stupid person. It was like, it's, yeah, then you don't take also accountability for your actions, and you are not willing to look at the relationship as what we are talking about, like as an important step in whatever you need to face in your life.
I would even go as far as the people that say that I've wasted 4 years of my life, they do not want to take any responsibility, like zero. Because that really shows if you go into a relationship and you spend 4 years with a person, at the end you feel like this was a waste of your time, then you went into the relationship with heavy expectations to get something from the other person that at some point they didn't keep giving to you. And that's why it was a waste of time. If you go in and you actually want to understand yourself, which is constantly reflected back to you in a relationship, especially in your most intimate ones, that's why you just have to look at your family and you'll see where shit like hits the fan. Like that's one of your most intimate relationships. And so if you go into it with that intention to really try to understand yourself and to see like what is this trying to teach me, here's what I'm going to tell all of you guys. I think every single interaction, every single circumstance, every single moment of your life, wherever you are, whatever is going on, is required for you right now. It's a valid thing in your experience and you need that. Right? So it's never a waste to be with someone. It's only a waste if you're not trying to even understand what's going on. So if you're just trying to go back to what's pleasant, what's good, what feels good, right, what's familiar, which is actually the stuff that keeps you unhappy ultimately, but if you just want that, then obviously, yeah, relationships are going to be painful. And I haven't disclosed this, I think, in the Facebook group, but me and my wife, we split up, and now we're probably getting divorced soon. And that relationship, like, I can just tell you, I wanted to make it work. I wanted to understand. I really wanted to go deep and take her with me. And then there were times where I felt like that was not possible. I had to sacrifice myself. I couldn't really take care of myself the way I needed to. And at some point, it became clear like this is no longer working. But I also didn't bitch out right away. It was really fucking painful. There were moments where I'm like, I just want to fucking quit this and just get the fuck out of here. And then one of the guys I was working with as a teacher, as a guide for me, he was like, don't go yet, stay in it, stay in it. And so I went through these phases of like, oh shit, I really want to get the fuck out. And okay, I'm in this, I'm committed. But eventually I realized like I've really tried to make it work. Like I wanted the best for both of us. It wasn't just like, oh, let me get my own selfish needs met. I really wanted to break both of us open. And because that didn't happen, when it actually ended, when I left then, it was like I didn't feel pain. I was like, in the beginning, like the relationship was extremely, I would say I've never experienced anything like that, the way it was flowing. And then towards the end, like I was just like, okay, it's time to get out of here. Like really time to get out. Like my freedom is on the line if I keep sacrificing myself to make this work when clearly like it's not going to happen. And so in that relationship, like I said, I tried to make it work a couple of times. So that's one of the reasons. And then it didn't happen. And I got feedback from her that we're just really not aligned. And that also showed me more and more, okay, it's time to actually move on. Like whatever this relationship, and she showed me a lot of stuff. I learned a shit ton of things. Like I had still like such a strong aversion to conflict. Like I didn't want to say things that would raise conflict. I would feel so uncomfortable in my body that I wouldn't do that. That was one of the things that I did with her, and it really stirred up a lot of shit inside of me that I knew this was for me to look at. So overall, this relationship was not a fail whatsoever. It happened really quickly, right? It didn't last for that long, but it was, I really flowed with life when this happened. We met in Chicago. We got married a few months later. Like it wasn't like, ooh, let me plan this out. Let me get married to someone who has X, Y, and Z credibility or checklist things checked off, right? It was really like flowing with it. And this is where I am now. And I feel amazing with that. Like I have no regrets. I don't feel like, ooh, marriage is this big thing, right? Oh shit, you're so committed or whatever. It's like, that's life. And that feels really liberating. Like I have a very different perspective on it now.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's powerful, but at the same time, I can also see that the way you handle that is likely not the way that most people at the moment doing the breakup they can handle the same way, because you have, well, of course you have this way more developed sense of self and the things that you want, the things that you want to give yourself, and how you are dealing with this specific breakup.
Actually, I think, actually, let me just interject here. I think the one thing that will make all the difference is how you want to deal with the pain that comes in any case. Are you running from pain in general, or are you trying to embrace the pain because you understand by containing it, by being with it, by actually feeling it, it will transform and you're going to understand why it was there. And that's why now I tell women, literally, I'm like, don't hold back. Like, even if I say, like the other day, a girl sent me a picture of her letting blood, right? Like getting blood taken and donating blood. And I was like, this gives me like a queasy feeling in my body. But at the same time, I don't want you to be like, oh, I can't send him anything with blood anymore. No, I'm like, send it to me. I want to experience what's happening in my body. I actually want to be with it because I want to understand it. So when I do that, then I'm not trying to find the good stuff. I don't want to feel good all the time. I want to feel authentically. And when I do that, then my whole relationships transform because I'm not trying to put the other person in a box or say you have to be this way or that way. It's just about fully opening up authentically. And that, I think, that's the differentiating factor. So it's like when you can do that, all your relationships are going to transform.
I think, yeah, you just answered. I was going to ask you the question of what do you think kind of changed, or your approach into this made you able to start, yeah, seeing this way, or starting to make you deal with that in a different way. But you just kind of did. So we are aligned on that for sure. Uh, One thing that, as we discussed this, also makes me realize, in a way, that this same fear of breakups and fear of pain is also the thing that will prevent you from meeting new people and being uncomfortable with getting rejected in different levels. But I think they're related in the way that it's not pleasant. Getting rejected can be, also painful, because a person's just telling you in your face, I don't like you. You were like this. You're stupid. You're ugly. Whatever it is. And this uncomfortable feeling, or this idea that you need to avoid these uncomfortable feelings, like you were explaining, is what is preventing you to actually start exploring, to start seeing, oh, how does that feel? When people ask me, oh, why you were doing this? It's so dangerous. Or why you were doing this? It's like, it's stupid. I'm like, yes, I'm afraid. Yes, there's fear behind it. But I'm not going to not do the things that are important to me because of this.
I think that when you mentioned this, like just snowboarding there, like in a war zone like that, on some level, I felt this is exactly what I'm craving too, that sense of aliveness, that willingness to completely surrender even our own life, right? Like, and I think a big part that plays into this, again, like as with everything, awareness is a big key in order to stay with the stuff that's really uncomfortable. Like when these things come up, normally our reaction is so quick that we don't even see it. It just happens so unconsciously that we don't even know, okay, we're already resisting this thing now. So the more we can actually stay with what's really going on and not getting sucked into our own like unconscious patterns and behaviors, right? The more we can stay with it, the more we can actually integrate it. And this comes back to the whole rejection thing that you said. Like, it's the it's almost like, are you looking for the pain, not for the sake of pain itself? Like, we're not masochistic, or what's it called, sadomasochistic, like where you enjoy pain inflicted on you, but it's
Depends
actually
on the
trying to
moment.
see where the pain. You try- that is true. It depends on where the pain is, like where is it coming from, trying to want to see what is the message in this, really trying, like if everything in life, and I said this before, if everything in life is required, it's a valid thing and it's there for a reason, which means there is a message in this. So when you can look for the message, and that's not, generally we think, oh, looking for the message means we have to question why. No, it's not what I mean. Actually feeling it will get you to the message. Unconditionally feeling it. And for unconditional feeling, we need to have a certain level of awareness. Otherwise, we're going to get sucked into unconscious behavior again because we want to avoid the feeling bad, and then we just escape it. So when we can stay with it, we can stay present with it, we don't run from it, we just feel it, then it's going to dissolve on its own. And the message will become clear. Like that is the key differentiating factor, I would say. And another thing, actually, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's spot on. That's
Awesome.
no comments. Just say, yeah, great. Listen to this guy.
Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to still touch on is this, our definition of love. Like, what is the love that we've seen when we were growing up? So, for example, it could simply be with our parents. If we've witnessed that in a relationship where two people are supposedly loving themselves, that it's going to end in serious pain, where one person sues the other person and gets really upset and gets really mean and bitchy and stuff. If that is our internalized version or definition of love, then what we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives until we become conscious of it, we're going to be recreating circumstances that will then end in that exact same situation. So we say, oh, I really love this person. And then the end of that love is That person is suing you, that person is cursing you, you might not even recognize that person anymore. Like that is the unconscious definition of love, which we need to get conscious of. Otherwise, we keep recreating the same patterns over and over and over again.
Yeah, I I can see that so strong. Like my my mother, she would always work really hard to maintain the relationship and go through whatever she had to go through to maintain that. And I could just see in all my breakups, like trying everything I could to make sure I could maintain that relationship. And it took me a lot of time to realize, oh, wow, I'm just copying this idea. I don't even know why I'm fighting so hard for this relationship. It ended. In the end of the relationship, I already felt like, oh, maybe it's not the best relationship. But then as soon as it ends, like this unconscious feeling of like, oh, I need to fight so hard for this. I need to do all of that. I need to maintain this relationship because it's a sacred thing that I can't have it destroyed. And I couldn't even realize why. And it was only for awareness, was only with also the pain of the breakups and inquiring on that that I started to see this pattern. And then in my last breakup, I'm like, okay, I don't need to reach out. I don't need to, keep trying and to make this work because what we had was great. It was amazing. It ended. It's sad, but okay. Let's keep going.
Yeah. And the more and the more, again, coming back to, right, the more we need from the other person, the harder it's going to feel. Like the less you're going to be like, okay, cool, it's this is complete, this actually feels complete, this relationship. There's always this, I need more, I want something, because you still haven't learned how to give that to yourself. And that's why if you are currently going through a heartbreak, it's a little bit different than for someone who is currently in a relationship. But all of this still applies. So if you are currently going through a heartbreak, it's really investigating. And actually, it's not so much with the mind investigating, but feeling wise investigating, not running from the discomfort. So be compassionate with yourself, set time aside for you on a daily basis, like an hour, 2, 3 hours, just to be with yourself and just feel all of it. Don't run from it, and you're going to see how your life starts to actually brighten up again on its own, just by you feeling it. That's really dealing with a breakup. Everything else, what people say, like, oh, yeah, I'm just forgetting about this person, and they do all this external stuff, it's not actually getting over a person. They're just suppressing it more from their awareness. So they're just, it's to them actually going to feel like, shit, I've dealt with this breakup. But then in the next relationship, boom, it's going to flare up again. They've just become really good at pushing it even further away from their awareness, so they're not conscious of it anymore. But nothing has actually changed. And that's not what I want for you. I want for you to be at a point with your relationships, however long they are. It could be a day, could be a one time thing, could be a week, 3 months, 5 years, 20 years, whenever they end, to feel like this is complete and it served its purpose. This is a valid thing that happened. Every moment of it was valid and required for me. And the more you go into it with the intention of trying to uncover the parts of you that still need integration, the parts of you that you're still rejecting in yourself, right? All of that, the more it's going to lead to that point where it feels like I have entered this relationship for the exact reason that it was meant to be in the first place. To mirror back to me the things that I haven't seen yet, that are just clearly shown to me if I'm willing to look. So that willingness to look can only come if we allow ourselves to not run from the pain, but to actually embrace it as something that is necessary. Because if we look at how we've lived our lives during childhood, the first 7 years, there was so much pain, so much trauma that we've never resolved, which is still stuck in our bodies. So now when we're trying to get into it and look for it, like, yeah, it's going to get uncomfortable, but that's what we want. That's the only way we can integrate it. We need to actually put our awareness on it so it can come up and surface, so we can actually see it, and then we can integrate it. So when the pain comes up, when the really uncomfortable feelings arise, let's not run from them, but actually integrate them, and that will free us forever. That's a permanent resolution. That's not a band-aid anymore.
Yeah. And just in case you, yeah, you feel that this is something hard for you and you don't know how to reintegrate or you don't know how to process all of that, you can always just reach out to us and get into our Facebook group, which, yeah, it's amazing. We have a lot of like really interesting people there, a lot of content, so you definitely get a lot from that. Yeah, I think I wish, to be honest, I wish to have at least this content shown to me back in the days when I was going through breakups, or even during parts of my relationship where I felt, okay, this is going to end, because it would change the way I would experience those things and how long it took me to recover from specific situations. Of course, it's all part of my development, it's all part of things that I had to go through. But at the same time, if we are not really open to change, to inquire, we can just go through the same thing over and over, over and over, and never learn, because we don't fully take responsibility. We don't really fully take the time. We don't inquire about things. We just push everything away, try to push the pain, next spear, next whatever, and then you just keep going to the same and same thing without realizing that it's, yeah, it's here. Just someone is giving you the hand and saying like, okay, come with me. And that hand is you. Plot twist. It's you handing the hands to yourself.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's See, it's funny when you said that. I'm not sure even, let's say, when I was going through this whole pickup phase and stuff. I remember like there was some content like similar to this, not exactly that, but I was not interested in that at all. So it's really interesting to know, would I have actually listened to this, or would I have been like, I don't know what the fuck this guy's talking about. So it really depends on where you are in your journey. For some of you, this will resonate. For others, it may not at all. And that is okay, right? Like it's wherever you are. If this resonates, then keep going. Because like you said, the same emotional contents, they're just going to keep repeating themselves in different faces, different women, different body shapes, different circumstances, but the same stuff is going to keep happening over and over again until we find a permanent resolution. And that's why most of the tools that we're being given in society, if they do not include the felt perception, the felt integration of those emotions, it's not going to do anything for us. That's why we're so exhausted at this point. Like we've been looking in all these different directions, and everybody is like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And nothing actually gets us to a point where it's a permanent resolution, because we're not going back far enough where the emotional integration happens, which is where all this stuff, all this discomfort that we're feeling now is coming from in the first place. So we have to go that far back. And when we actually make that commitment not to stop for anything other than that, then we will have permanent resolution. Then we will experience the peace, the love, the joy, the bliss. They're all already there. So it's just, are we committed to going all the way? That's really the question.